Hey guys, this is Real Appalachia with Shane.
And Melody.
And we're back again, and we got a lot of good feedback on our last newspaper article video.
Which is called?
A New Look at Old News.
That's right.
I remembered it this time.
Yeah. So if you didn't watch the last one, go check it out, and you'll want to hear this one too. I think this is a really horrific story, but I think it'll be like a good discussion, and yeah, like trigger warning and all that. It involves a murder, and it hits very close to home for me. So
yeah, and that's it's crazy that some of these stories we've never heard of before until you start digging in, and these are some of them pretty massive stories.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
This one I would think would fit in that category, but
yes.
Without further ado, I'll let you.
And I had never heard of this before, as close to home as it hits for me.
The little bits that you've told me about it, I hadn't heard of it either. So
yeah, okay. So this one is from the Lebanon News. They had a scare of shutting down Lebanon, Virginia. They had a scare of shutting down, but I think they got new ownership. And
thank God it happened to Welsh News, and some of these have shut down recently. I mean, it's a hard times for newspapers. I mean, the ones that are printing 4, 5, 6 pages, it's sad.
And I think that this little outlet of our show is going to help show how important the newspapers are, you know. Yeah. I mean, we research newspaper articles countlessly for our book and historical efforts, and anyways.
Hopefully their credibility will go back to what it used to be, and then we can trust them more.
That's true. Usually local news is better.
Oh, yeah. True, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially about something like this story that you're about to tell us about.
Yes. So this is from the Lebanon News, and this was Friday, February 1st, 1946.
It was a good year. Sounds like it.
How would you know?
I don't know.
Are you that old?
No. Okay. No. I was thinking about people you've said about wine or whatever.
Well, it wasn't a good year for Dale Mutter, because the headline reads, Dale Mutter slain with trench knife and double-bladed axe in Woodshed at Belfast home.
Well, that's a gripping headline.
It is.
Man.
Veteran of Air Corps held in death of his father-in-law. And the article, once I zoom in, close my eyes, goes on to say, all Russell County was shocked and horrified late Sunday afternoon by the act of a young man shell-shocked and unbalanced by the horrors of war in and over Germany, plunging 2 of the county's finest and esteemed old families in indescribable grief. Dale Carter Stewart, handsome, likable, 23-year-old, 6'3" Lebanon young man, was brought to the Lebanon jail around 6:30 p.m. Sunday in connection with the axe trench knife slaying of his father-in-law, Dale Mutter, 65, in the woodshed at the Mutter home 14 miles east of Lebanon in the Belfast section at 5 p.m. Stewart, an Army Air Corps bombarder, was honorably discharged from the service last summer, and soon after his return, it was apparent that the strain of battle had affected his mind. Commonwealth attorney C.S. Wilson, who investigated the affair, said Mutter, his throat slashed and his head practically severed by a blow from an axe, was found face downward.
Jeez.
The Commonwealth attorney said that Stewart's wife told him that she realized something had been wrong with her husband for several days, and that he had been acting peculiar, and that they had planned to take him to a veterans hospital on Monday. Wilson said that Mrs. Stewart told him that she was packing her husband's clothes early that afternoon when he remarked to her, quote, I'm thinking of something gruesome. She told Wilson that when she asked her husband not to think of such things, and then asked him to go to the woodshed and bring a bucket of coal, she said that he returned in a few minutes with about a half bucket full and told her, that's enough for a while. You need protection, and I'm going to protect you. Mrs. Stewart said that she noticed her husband had a trench knife and a pistol in his belt, and that he told her, quote, I've killed your father in the woodshed.
Man.
He was going to kill you, your mother, your brother, and his children. She told Mr. Wilson that she succeeded in getting the knife and pistol from him and gave them to her mother. She and her mother then went to look for her father and found him dead in the woodshed.
Wow.
Claude Walden and Wayne Mutter, son of the slain man, were the first neighbors to reach the scene. They said that they told Stewart to go get your coat and let's go to your father's home. Stewart left with them, who later turned himself over to the sheriff deputy Dallas Smith and Conley Fields, who were on the way to the scene. There were no eyewitnesses of the tragedy. Dale Stewart, son of the United States Marshal John W. Stewart, who lives in Lebanon and has had his office in Roanoke, served in the Army Air Corps for 3 years, being discharged during the past summer. He is credited with 40 missions over Germany during the most bitter part of the Air War and has the Air Medal with several oak leaf clusters. The citation accompanying his award read, "The courage, coolness, and skill displayed by this enlisted man upon these occasions reflect great credit upon himself and the armed forces of the United States." The 23-year-old flyer is a veteran of a score of bombing attacks on enemy installations. He took an active part in the 8th Air Force March-April Blitz on airfields being used by the Nazis for jet-propelled fighter planes. Funeral services for the slain man were held at the home on Tuesday afternoon, a large crowd of friends of the family attending. A hearing for Stewart is set for this Thursday afternoon before Judge Carter. It is understood that Commonwealth Attorney Wilson will ask that Stewart be sent to a state institution for psychiatrist's determination of sanity before he is tried on a charge of murdering his father-in-law. Judge Carter is expected here from Gate City about noon. It's gripping, isn't it?
I wonder what the gruesome thing he was thinking about doing was.
That's not funny.
I'm going to cut this out of the video, but no. I've been reading Norman.
I think you should just leave it and let everybody see how you are.
No.
Wuss.
Well, then I will leave it in here, and you'll be living to pay the price. Anyway.
You know, one thing that really struck me out when I was reading this, okay, like I said, this hits close to home.
Yeah.
Belfast, Russell County, very close where I grew up in Honaker.
Right.
One of the sheriff deputies that showed up, Conley Fields, was an elder in my church when I was a kid.
What?
Yeah.
So you knew. You had a personal connection.
Yeah, this was 1946, and the cop that came, 1946, and the cop that came was this sweet little elder man from my church. And, like, it's just so crazy to think that he was like the first on the scene to see this, and he was just the sweetest little man, and his wife was my Sunday school teacher, and you know, he always sat in the same little bench at church. They put a little plaque up when they both passed away, and they said that he passed away like the dream, watching his favorite show, which was Judge Judy, and eating a box of chocolates. Like, this man was such a good man.
What a way to go, yeah.
Yeah, like, he had some good karma in the world. He reaped what he sowed, and but anyways, that just blew my mind that I would know somebody from an article so old.
Yeah, and such a gruesome story that nobody's familiar with, really.
Yeah, and I associate him with, like, comfort and, you know, and that he would be associated with this, like you said, gruesome story. So, yeah. But, I mean, also, I was kind of surprised because you hear a lot now, like, oh, we've come so far with mental health, and I do believe that.
Yeah.
But, you know, they weren't, like, just painting him out to be a monster in this, the killer. They recognized that he had, you know, they don't say it here, but PTSD.
Right.
He was shell-shocked. That's the term I guess they used back then.
Yeah, you did hear that a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were recognizing that he had a lot of mental instability and that he was a war hero. Yeah. So it was a very tricky situation. I thought that article was just very well written, and it just kind of is eye-opening that, you know,
it was incredibly fair, like you said. It did make allowances rather than, you know, the tendency back then, from the things I've read a lot, black and white, bad person, good person, you know, something like that. It was just clearly defined, and but for them to acknowledge that also probably had something to do with his service and also with his family. You know, when you hear those names, Stewart, and Mutter, those are pretty common names now, and they're you know, well thought of people for the most part. You know,
like the article said. And so,
It's funny because, and I know I've talked about this to you offline, I've been really sucked back into the Civil War lately, and I've been studying all that, and they never talk about PTSD and all that kind of stuff for those guys. And in fact, one of the authors I'm not going to name because I can't say that what he says is right or wrong, but claimed that it didn't happen, that there was no such thing as PTSD or anything after that. Them guys just went back to work and like nothing happened.
No.
And I can't believe that that's true.
I think that I read this in maybe the book Dope Sick, is that it was talking about opium spiked after the Civil War. I mean, you could get it just like we get Tylenol back then.
Yeah.
But that opium really spiked because of Civil War injuries and the mental health stuff that they didn't know about back then.
Yeah, I mean, just because people didn't diagnose it, or you as a man, you weren't allowed to complain about things like that back then, that doesn't mean it didn't exist.
But like the wife saying, don't think about that, go do this, go to that shed of weapons. We've come a little bit further than that now. I think you can't just tell somebody don't think that way. Well,
you see that in a lot of things that are more diagnosed and they got a more specific term, like for postpartum depression is one that a lot of people didn't know anything about, even in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those deals that something triggers people to become aware of it, and maybe you can try to treat and address it, which I don't know. It seems like a lot of military guys even today have a lot of trouble with this, and understandably so. But you'd have to think back then, you didn't see stuff like this on television. You're not desensitized. You didn't have video games where you're shooting people. And this was a foreign, completely thing to them.
Yeah.
And to go out there and see somebody, getting killed, body parts off, all kinds of stuff.
I can't say in my lifetime I've known of people being murdered around Honeacre. I've never in my lifetime known of anybody being murdered with like an axe.
Yeah.
So that makes you think that we have had to come a little bit farther with like mental health stuff, which I heard the term shell shocked a lot.
Yeah.
Like we said, but I guess that they only associated that kind of trauma response to like being in the war.
Yeah. And
didn't really recognize then that PTSD can come from a lot of different things, not just veterans. And so I think that it's great to know that we've come a long way in mental health, but it was recognized then that he did have a psychological disorder, and they were looking at maybe getting him help instead of just painting him out to be a monster. He had his own issues. Yeah, because a lot of times back then they would have had a tendency to go like, he hid it. He hid what a rotten person he was. Or something. We see that with these football players now. Which, like you said, it may have to do with him being a steward too. So if it was a Simmons, maybe not. But
I don't. Well, you don't know.
But he was a war hero, and that was something great he did, and it just affected him mentally.
He had a lot of creditable things in his life, and that's the thing. I think people looked at his past history and didn't just lump it on him, because you see that a lot, even with brain traumas from CTE with football players and stuff.
Right.
You see that things completely out of character.
About that.
Yeah. These brain traumas, you just don't know what could cause people to go off. So.
Yeah. But anyways, we hope that you enjoyed this story just like we did, and we're excited to bring you more. We've got some more lined up that are really good. They're just getting better and better and better. They're not all going to be this dark. I was about to say better and better is a weird term to use, but it's more interesting, and they're getting more and more. We've stumbled on some good stuff, and I did this week even. I got a new one that I hadn't even told you about. And we can't wait to share with you guys. You haven't told me. No. Secret. Well, I guess I'll have to stay tuned for next week, just like you guys. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that yet. And I guess we will see you on down the road. That's right.